everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Catherine Norma's Guide to Life podcast. How are you guys all doing? So this week, it's about social anxiety. Now, usually when I do, well, it kind of depends. Usually on with the podcast, I tend to ad lib, like for the ones when I'm doing New Year's, New Me, or whatever it is. Then I have like a rough kind of list of notes of things that I kind of want to say, and then I'll just kind of like spin off on that and talk for maybe about 40 minutes about stuff. But then there are kind of like topics like this that require a little bit of research. Okay, so I have kind of like prepared, actually, done quite a bit of research on this one. Okay, so, and the research, I have got the information from, I'm sure I made a note of it. Let me see if I can find it. I was organised, I did. Mental Health Foundation website, okay, and Ben as well. So I'll mention them again during the podcast, but I want to be citing that this is where I got all my information from. They're quite credible websites. So I was chatting to a guy recently who suffered from sort of social anxiety. And I wouldn't say that I hadn't really heard about it before, because I probably had, but I wasn't really aware maybe of what, came under the umbrella of social anxiety. Hadn't really thought about it much and thought, well, do you know what? I'll do a bit of research to say and find out exactly what it is. Because I like helping people if I can. And I thought, if I can kind of understand, what someone's going through, then maybe I can do something to help them. That's kind of just how my brain sort of thinks. So the clinical definition of social anxiety, it's excessive fear of social situations. And the person that I was sort of with, he hadn't previously been affected by this, but he'd developed the condition in later life. And when I did the research, they said that you usually have this from a child. So maybe there were sort of certain signs there before, but it were so slight people didn't really notice them. And then a trauma triggered them. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I can't really comment on that, but I'm just talking from this guy's personal experience. And I say, for me, being a really introverted child, okay, I was an only child. I'd hide behind mum at any social gathering, hardly speak a word. I was extremely shy. And my uncle commented, I went from shy guy to wild child in the space of a couple of years. But now I'd say I've got quite a nice balance, because I thought to myself, have I had this, or have I got some of these traits? Because I'm pretty sure that actually I probably do. And as I say, surprisingly, my partner sort of occasionally sort of like, I still stay up, late partying sometimes, but I have a nice balance and I am a lot more sensible than I used to be. In fact, he does say I'm sensible. So I've gone back to how I was as a child, interestingly enough. I've gone through the kind of like wild child stage and I've kind of come full circle and I'm quite sensible again. I mean, for example, this week I've had alcohol to drink, mainly because I'm on a diet as well, but alcohol, I don't need any alcohol. I think I used to need alcohol in social situations. I used to have a drink before I could socialise with people, but I had a glass of Prosecco at the golf club because they were giving them out. And then I had a tiny little bit of wine at mother's house, but I don't feel the need now to have alcohol at social situations. Because I went in and I was chatting to various different people in the golf club, without sort of the need for having a drink, which I think is actually a really good place to get to. And as I say, sometimes though, there are the odd times when I do sort of like maybe perhaps, have a little bit too much, like for example, partner was waiting for a train at me a train station. It was like wobbles across town having a glass of wine or three. With a group of friends. So I do go out and socialise and drink and socialise. I don't need alcohol to socialise. So I would say I'm a completely different person than I used to be. I used to be reliant, a social drinker. That's how I describe myself, a social drinker. But it's great, actually. It's a good feeling, not to be in that situation, not to need a drink. But anxiety, disorder is a little bit more than just being shy. It's a genuine anxiety or fear of avoidance of a social situation. And I'm trying to think, is that me? Have I done that? Because it's always good to analyse yourself, isn't it? Because the only way we're ever going to change and improve ourselves is if we analyse ourselves and then we can change. So I thought, I'd perhaps take a questionnaire and I'd decide if I had any traits that needed working on when it came to sort of social anxiety. Like psychological symptoms, they can present in their following ways. So I'll kind of go through which bits, kind of kind of key sort of social anxiety things. Then I'm going to go through, examples of why that may or might not be myself. Because I think sometimes if you hear somebody talking it all through, somebody else out there listening might think, do you know what, that resonates with me. And then sometimes just by thinking, oh, it's not just me, that actually can be helpful in itself. So fear of situations in which you may be judged. Okay, well, anyone who's admitting to being James Blunt's muse and now has people judging whether they believe me or not is certainly not bothered by that. It is me. Right, okay, without question of a doubt, it is me. Right, if you have a look at recent comments on his Instagram post, you'll see my reference to him pointing to a door with 007 on it. I'm doing this now. It's going out in April. This is around the 22nd of March. And then he puts up a post from Russia with Love, which is with music from Russia with Love, which is a James Bond film. And this sort of thing has been going on for some considerable time. And I can't really believe that no one has actually noticed it yet. Or maybe they just have noticed it but can't quite pinpoint anything. But it happens a lot, okay? It's going backwards and forwards. But, it's just not, the right time for either of us to kind of, come out and sort of say, yeah, he's worried. He's really worried. And he suffers from anxiety and he gets really nervous. And that's the issue. And that's been the issue all along, that he's too nervous to talk to me. Okay. And that's part of the problem. So worrying that you'll embarrass or humiliate yourself, and see my reply above. I remember when I was a student, right, breaking down an old Mini on a roundabout, hungover, still dressed as a clown with full makeup on and a red nose and a clown's wig, and some bloke helping me push my car. And then I think somebody who's been in that situation doesn't really worry about being embarrassed or humiliated. I think I've done that enough times already. I also had to stand up and do a presentation at a sales conference in front of the bigwigs, having never even read the presentation because my manager, who was supposed to be doing it, was last seen in the bar at 2 a.m. and had not resurfaced yet. We couldn't locate her. Still don't know what happened to her. No, I don't know where she went. I've got a suspicion, but I'm not going there. So I don't think that's a thing for me. Was it a thing for me? I don't know. I can't really remember that far back. Crippling fear of interacting with strangers. Well, when I was going through my divorce, actually, I didn't want to speak to anybody. I wouldn't say I had a crippling fear, but I would, but it was certainly something that I struggled with. It's one of the reasons I took an additional job as a receptionist, so that I had to start speaking to people again, not only kind of work colleagues, but also, the general public. And that's really, really helped me. Plus also doing my podcast has really, really helped me with that. Now, avoiding an event or interaction which could put you as the centre of attention. Again, at some point, possibly I'm going to be the centre of attention. And actually, I have been. And I didn't actually used to mind that role. But it's interesting because when I was the centre of attention was when I was having the alcohol. So when you have alcohol, it sort of loosens your inhibition. So obviously, I'm not kind of really bothered about being the centre of attention. But I get there through drinking. Am I the centre of attention now? I don't know. I don't think I am really. I don't need all the attention on me. Because that's also quite narcissistic, requiring lots of attention, isn't it? I don't think I need much attention anymore. I'm not really fussed whether I'm the centre of attention or not, but I'm realistic in the fact that at some point, because of this whole James Blunt thing and this massive secret that we've got between us, which I'll just slip in there, but we'll carry on as if I hadn't said it. Because with communications, people don't always hear what you're saying. I don't know, and somebody will pick up on that at some point. but we do have a really big secret. That I probably am going to be the centre of attention, and I'm getting to grips with that. I'm okay with that. I don't really worry about it anymore. But when I first worked it all out, and I was gripped with panic and fear because it wasn't something that I'd ever wanted. And I was really quite stressed about the whole thing. However, I've done a lot of work to build up my confidence to the point that I am now okay with it. And I went to say off to work to build my confidence up. And I did go a little crazy at first and say, I think I'll have done an awful lot to overcome the fear of being famous. From people I have also had a lot of help from people in the entertainment industry, which you guys previous to this would not know anything about. And I'm still getting help from them now and support from them now. From the communications industry, and I'm happy to text radio shows now and speak on them. I've done an interview and I've also spoken to Steve Denier on Virgin Radio. I'm quite starting to be happy to text in the guys now at Radio 2, particularly Sarah Cox and Scott Mills. I don't mind, sort of like, messaging them and sending them things now. I'm getting comfortable with that because celebrities, I've met them. They're actually really nice bunch of people on the whole. They're just normal people, and there is this little celebrity world, and they all do sort of support each other. And you do get some prima donnas, but then you also get some really, really nice people as well, particularly in the radio industry. I have noticed they're all very, very nice. So looking to find flaws in one's interactions after a social interaction. Right, this is something that I definitely used to do, okay, in the past. I would overthink the whole conversation over and over again, thinking that, did I say the right thing? Have I said the wrong thing? Should I said something different? Had I said the right thing to the wrong person, of which I have done before? So there have been occasions where I blurted out something, trying to do the right thing, and then got myself in a whole host of trouble and having to explain myself to a vice president. Promising that it'll never happen again. Sometimes you can't do wrong, you can't do right from wrong or whatever it is. There's a saying, isn't there? I can't remember what it is, but that's it anyway. And so I do think, I did have a lot to drink at that point as well. That was at one of the Christmas parties. I just caught myself going, but hopefully there haven't been too many previous to that, which is quite good. As I say, I actually I catch myself saying again, but I don't actually drink very much anymore. I've spent a couple of years making myself going to social gatherings sober and forcing myself to have conversations with people because I'd identified that this was an issue, that I only really felt comfortable in those situations when I'd had a drink. Fear of offending people. See above. It's not a fear, but I have managed to offend somebody. And really apologies again to Dermot O'Leary if I did offend you by not recognising you when you were gatecrashed at this morning's Christmas party. Yeah. Anticipating the worst possible outcome when interacting with people. So this is up there with catastrophising. And if I'm honest, I used to rehearse conversations with people in my head before actually talking to them. And I used to have a bit of a stutter on the telephone, which you'd probably never know, given that I'm now chatting on a radio microphone. Sorry. If you can hear a Labrador thumping around in the background, I have no idea what she's doing. What are you doing? Should we ask her? Oh, she's playing with a small rugby ball, she tells me. It's right behind my chair. Getting the hint that she probably wants something. I don't know what, but we'll carry on regardless anyway. We'll just let her shuffle around behind me. Interestingly enough, this is completely going off track now, but I just have to share this with you. I'm going to have to change my office around because I think my floor is slightly uneven and I feel like I'm sitting slightly downhill to the left-hand side. So I'm going to actually have to change my desk around and try and do that tomorrow morning before work. So I'm kind of, because it feels really odd. I feel really, really wonky. Anyway, I'm digressing. So it's possibly, I used to kind of have a bit of a stutter on the telephone, and it's possibly maybe a little anxious tick, which I overcame by working in jobs where I needed to speak to people on the telephone, forcing myself to do these things. And now I don't think twice about, I used to hate phoning people. I don't think twice about phoning people. I used to come out with a cold sweat. And I picked up the telephone number to dial it, and I hated speaking to the people on the telephone. My parents' telephone bill when I was a teenager was like really, really low because I'd never phoned anybody. I absolutely hated it. I was panicking. I don't know why. I have no idea why that is. But that clearly is, so it's some form of social anxiety, which I have kind of obviously got out of now, which is great. Fear of embarrassing physical symptoms like sweating. Do you have that? Does anyone sweat? I know someone that does actually. They have a sweaty back and they're a little bit paranoid about it, but I'm not going to say who it is. Sweaty pitch, sweaty kind of like, sweaty palms. Have you done that when you just shake the hand? You've got to shake hands with someone's got a really wet, sweaty palm. It's horrible, isn't it? It's horrible. Shaky voice, okay, limbs trembling or blushing. And I do notice to say, so I think when I first started off on this whole James Blunt journey, I kind of noticed he had a real nervousness to his voice. And I think that anyone who's made a mistake and then suffered the full impact of the press against them, you'd say must have some kind of struggle with anxiety. And that's why I mentioned before, he does clearly suffer with anxiety. He gets nervous doing podcasts. You can tell his tick is that he says things that have gone wrong, or he swears, or he says something that doesn't make sense mid-sentence. I think that's how it all comes out. He kind of says random words in sentences. And it's what happened to him when we kind of met. But I was really angry at the time and also felt really sad and a bit sorry for him that he was like this. And you kind of expect a superstar to be really confident, but he wasn't. It was complete contrast to how he'd been when my friend, the Frothy Coffee Man, had dinner with him, where he'd been telling him stories about his life, slightly boastful and probably exaggerated, making everything up, because that's the narcissistic personality. They live in kind of their own idea of reality, and it's not necessarily the real world, because that's more interesting than the life that they're actually in. But there we go. So he was a completely different person when he had dinner with Frothy Coffee Man than he did when he had dinner with me. Also, avoiding activities or people because of fear or anticipated embarrassment. And I wouldn't say I was like this, but I did used to tend to panic and run from situations because I felt like I couldn't cope with them. And I know the whole situation that I, kind of maybe went through with Marie Curie last week. Well, it wasn't last week, but it was in terms of when I'm recording this podcast, but it won't be in terms of when you're listening to it, of me kind of like saying, I haven't got time. But I wouldn't actually say it wasn't a panic. It wasn't I can't cope, although I did say I can't cope with it. But actually it was more the fact that I don't have time for this, okay, as well. You need people doing this bit that are not working full time. That was the issue. So it wasn't that I couldn't cope with that. I did used to feel I couldn't cope with them. I used to run. But I think running and marathons really help with that. But you have to keep putting one foot in front of the other to get where you need to be. And I have noticed I've regressed slightly since I've been running. There have been a few times recently where I have gone to a little bit of kind of panicky meltdown. So that is something that I've identified that I need to work on. I think I've got lots of medals to show, for my running and stuff as well. I am planning to do another charity run. And I've got all clear from the physio. I'm going to try and concentrate as well, sort of like, because I went from standing from the back of the concert, standing right at the front. Now, if you have ever stood right at the front of a concert or at a race as well, I used to hover at the back and I can kind of go in the middle now as well. You're kind of worried that people are going to be looking at you. But they're not. They're looking at the stage, and that doesn't bother me as well. And now I've got people nudging each other and saying, it's her behind the desk. I heard that today. It's her. Who? The one behind the desk. Really? Yes. It is me. It's quite funny. I was quite pleased I actually heard it. There was like nudging. It was fine. This is all the domestics at the hospital. They're kind of like, yeah. The You're Beautiful girl was a domestic. I've got domestic status. It's quite funny. But anyway, it's been it doesn't bother me. Okay. And I also heard I had a conversation, although this is somebody who's going deaf. Okay. One ear works really, really well. And I did used to have hearing like a bat. So this one, be warned, guys, this one ear works exceptionally well because it's had to make allowances for the other one that doesn't. So probably it's even working even better than it was before. So I heard someone going, why do you think she's done it now? I don't know. But she had a scan the other day, which is why I've kind of gone out, with all this stuff about why I've had a scan and what's going on in my life, because actually people are starting to ask questions about it. And rather than getting frustrated and annoyed about it, just say it. I don't really care. I don't have anything to hide. it's, well, actually, that's true, actually, because we do have a big secret that we are hiding, but we're not at that point yet. This is one step at a time. I have tried telling a few people about it, and yeah, one of them ended up having a bit of a meltdown, and the other one just didn't believe me. So I thought, you know what, we'll leave it there for the time being. There needs to be a lot more media done on it first before we actually say, do you know what, it's true. But I will just say to you, while we're having these conversations, has anybody noticed that everything's beautiful, that everyone's an angel? I got called an angel at hospital. I was like, yeah, I am an angel. It's like a real angel. I am, honestly. So it was quite exciting, actually. I was like, yeah, I've got wings and everything. No, I haven't got wings, but okay. Another buzzword, mind blowing. Right, that's one of the lines. These are all lines in his songs, right? But nobody's noticed yet, and it's really funny. What else have we got? There's loads of things. I hear it all the time. It makes me laugh. Halo's probably been mentioned as well, and this, like, I've noticed, like, all the songs on the radio and stuff like that. You should listen, and this is why people don't actually listen. And there was a vicar, I'll say he was a vicar, I don't know what he was, but on Radio 2 this week, and he was talking about going deaf as well, and talking about, like, when we're talking about Jesus, and when Jesus said what was going to happen next, people heard him, but they didn't actually listen to him. Just putting that out there. It's like, but people don't listen. They don't actually listen to what's being told to them. If you actually listen to conversations in between each song on the radio, you'll pick up little snippets of words that don't actually make sense to what the presenter's saying. I hear them now because I've had a little bit of communications training. Do it, especially first thing in the morning between maybe about 6:30. Have a listen intently to the conversations that are going on and see if you can pick up any keywords and stuff like that. I'm trying to remember some more. There's loads of them out there, but that's where we are at the moment. I can't remember any. So that's where we are. And as I say, everyone's like, why is she doing it now? Well, at some point in the future, it will all become clear. But that's what I'm saying for now. Right, constantly being critical and judging oneself. Well, the fact that I've just self-analysed myself clearly indicates that I do this, don't I? I'm judging myself already. And say, just last week, a teenager told me not to be so hard on myself. She did, actually, bless her. And because I was annoyed that I'd put on, say, 10 kilograms since breaking my leg. And she's like, but you're having to, like, learn to walk again. And then you've had sciatica. And then, you've had all this and you've had all that. So don't be so tough on yourself. So I was like, okay, right. Thanks, teenager. So symptoms in children, sort of when they're younger, can be including to refusing to talk, temper tantrums. Well, most children have temper tantrums, crying or being clingy. And I would say I probably ticked all of those boxes. So what do physical symptoms include? Okay, palpitations, your heart beats faster than usual. My gran used to have these, interestingly enough, but it's not something that I've ever experienced. Shortness of breath. And the only time I've had this is when I've been working up a steep hill learning to run, so that's definitely not a thing for me. A churning sensation in your tummy and nausea. And again, not something I ever experienced remembering. Diarrhea. Well, I think everyone gets that if they're nervous or anxious about something. Isn't that like a normal body reaction? An out-of-body experience. This sounds a bit like looking at your situation as if you were not in it, or again, not something that I've really had any experience of. So muscle tension, confusion and lightheaded and dizzy sensations. And so I've had these, but I can allocate it to something else that's causing it. And a lot of people probably have those symptoms at some point in their life as well. So avoiding social interactions, things like eating in public. And I remember meeting somebody, and I can't for the life of me remember who it was, but they knew somebody who suffered from this. I think it was a relative. They had an issue where they were either sick or they choked on some food in a restaurant, in a public space. And after that, they were unable to eat in public again for the fear the same thing would happen. So that definitely is a thing. Looking people in the eye, apparently. I'm always really wary of anyone that avoids eye contact. Eye's the key to the soul. And you can read people by looking in the eyes the same way that you can read horses. So using public bathrooms, that used to be me. I remember having a number 2 once. And my mum and my cousin made fun of me. It was at Alton Towers. It's ingrained there, along with the fact like my cousin didn't share half an Easter egg with me. Just moving on from that. right? And after that experience, right, and honestly, this is so true. For it's taken me 20 years to get to the stage where I'm comfortable having a number 2 in a public toilet now. Yeah. Just so these little things, they can make a difference. Walking into a room where everyone's seated. So I've been to strange pubs on my own with knowing that I knew and chatted to people who I didn't know. So that's not an issue. It took a lot of courage to do it. And also, I went to the theatre alone and went alone. I didn't talk to anybody though. But to be honest with you, I was knackered and I really couldn't be bothered. But I went to the golf thing. And I did chat to people there. So I think that's the thing about doing sort of sport, isn't it? It's easier to chat to people. But I have been to the theatre. I went to see Shrek a while ago and I chatted to the family that I was there with. But where I was sat on last night, then there's sort of 2 couples and I was sort of piggy in the middle. So it wasn't really appropriate to sort of like strike up a conversation. But it wouldn't, going to the things arriving early or late, it just wouldn't really bother me. I'd just stroll in and take a seat. It's not really an issue. Returning purchases in person can be a thing. So do you know what? This was me. I used to get mum to take things back or not return them at all because I didn't want to take them back. So I didn't know that was a thing, but it is a thing, and it's a thing that I had a thing with. So it is definitely a thing. It's one of my things. But now I wouldn't have an issue taking something back. Starting a conversation. Again, it's now me that starts chatting to anybody. And this is the reason that I chose to do a podcast on this topic, because I wasn't very good at doing that at one point, and then I made myself become really good at it. And now I'll talk to anybody really in any sort of situation without needing a drink. So I think I'm evolving, definitely, which is good. Going on dates, talking to strangers. Again, I did that, no issues. And now I have a loving partner who I'm planning to move in with. Just mentioned that, planning to move in with, yeah. Attending a school or a job. And I say I don't have that, anymore. And I enjoy both of my jobs. I love both of my jobs. And I love doing my podcast. And I love doing my artwork. And the only thing that I didn't enjoy doing was the Marie Curie thing. And I've offloaded that. And so all I would say is, if you have something in your life that you don't enjoy doing, don't do it. It is as simple as that. Just say, no, I'm not doing that. Because that used to be me all over. No, I'm not doing it. I don't want to. Don't see why I should. And I went from being that person to maybe more of a, yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll help you with it. And I've actually gone, do you know what? No, I can't do it. I still haven't checked my messages to see. That was in the last podcast. If anyone's listened to that, to New Me, New March, you'll understand what I mean by that. I'm going to check them on Monday. Attending a school or a job. I've already mentioned that, haven't I? Sorry. Repeating myself. That used to be a thing. That can be an autistic thing, apparently. I think anything, though, can be put down to being anything if we're kind of, in that frame of mind. Going to large social events or parties. I like going to stuff like that. Did I used to? I'm not really sure. A ball is right up my street, and I'm happy to. I wouldn't say happy to be the centre of attention, but maybe I'm getting used to it. Actually, I'm not bothered by it. I'm okay with it, to be fair. I don't have to be the centre of attention, but I will cope with it I wouldn't say really cope with it. I can deal with it to a certain extent. But then there was kind of like, I saw a group of the press kind of all over this thing, and I thought, I wouldn't have liked that. No, it had that 20 years ago, I said, hey, it's me. And then we had loads of press chasing me around everywhere. I would have absolutely hated that. That would have been my world worst nightmare. I wouldn't have been able to cope with it, and I would have just run off in a panic somewhere, hidden. I couldn't have coped with it all. But I think now I'm older, more mature, more confident. I am getting to the stage where I will be able to cope with it at some point, but we're not quite there yet. We still need quite a bit of work doing. So I kind of like having a look at, there's all these things. And I do have some of these traits, personality traits. So I'm kind of wondering whether or not some people might suffer from some of the symptoms, but not all of them. And maybe some of us all have social anxiety. It doesn't have to be like, I've got social anxiety. Maybe it's everybody's got some sort of slight social anxiety. We always have to put labels on everything, don't we? And label people, you're a blue person, you're a pink person. Why do we have to do that? They're just a human being at the end of the day, aren't they? What's inside is the thing that matters the most. Incidentally, if you don't follow, what's he called? Hang on, I want to say the Buffalo Hunter, but it's not. I can't remember his name, and I'm not going to. Let me just have a look. I'll have to rummage around on my phone see if I can find him. Right, that's him. The Kalini Ghost Hunter, right? Ghost hunting Hawaiian cowboy, right? It's great. Some of the things that he says are fantastic. He's a Tennessee-based TikTok creator, right, and content creator. And he travels to the UK reviewing British staple foods, but now he's kind of on historic locations, right, and haunted sites. So a bit like the sort of thing that I was doing. Anyway, I've ended up kind of linking up, not with him, but I don't really know. Maybe he's related to one of my podcasts. I don't know. But anyway, he's now kind of like doing stuff, and he's like encouraging people to go and do like kind of, they're doing like exchanges, you know, for like, and trying to get the message through that we're all the same, we're all alike, okay, which is great. And he's Hawaiian, and I just, you know, I'm a massive fan of Hawaii, obviously, because I got married there. But you know, he's a great guy. So if you don't follow him on Instagram, please go and follow him on Instagram, along with myself, Catherine Norma's Guide to Life podcast. Because he is a Kahili Ghost Hunter. He's great. His stuff's really great, and he comes across as such a nice guy. And I saw a really nice post about he had a friend over, and basically the comments were like they were calling him fat. And he's like, basically, well, we know that. We can see we're fat by looking in the mirror. We don't need you to tell us something we already know. You know, and it's so true. But it doesn't matter what they look like inside. He's just awesome. He's just such a lovely person. And I'm like, and I've actually commented going, you're awesome, because he is awesome. He's great. So please go and follow him, because he's just, I really like him a lot. And I like his messaging. It's great. Okay, so we're halfway through, maybe a little bit over halfway through. Who can tell? So after kind of going through what social anxiety was all about, you know, I kind of thought, well, do you know what? How do you get help with it? Okay. You know, and one of the things that I hope this person that I spoke to doesn't mind saying is, but it might help somebody else. And he's the sort of person that would like to help somebody else. So, and I haven't said who he is or where I met him, so it'll be fine. It says, when the darkness comes, don't be afraid to talk to somebody. Okay. And that's the most important message out there. You have to be able to talk to somebody about it. So even if it's your imaginary friend, just talk to them about it, okay? Right, so ben.org.uk, right, has some great advice on how to manage this condition. The first is a technique that I have learned to cope with, you know, help cope with anxiety. Because when I was at a festival on my own, I had a bit of a kind of like mind-spinning meltdown kind of moment at some point, and it's to focus on your breathing, and when you breathe in and out, okay, in a slow, regulated way, like that, and just maybe hold your breath in. You thought I'd gone then, didn't you? No. Right. So just, you know, do it for a few seconds, in and out. It does really relax you. And these are things that I've been teaching my partner as well, to do this. It helps you calm down. It helps the panic, stops the panic from subsiding, because also you're just focusing on your breathing, and that's really important. Also have a dog, large Labrador, who's lying behind me, thumping around, playing with a rugby ball. Has she gone back to sleep now? Let me just check. Yes, she's snoozing with her eyes shut. Right, so I get out into the fresh air every day, basically, because if I didn't take her for a walk every day, she'd be an absolute nightmare. No, to be fair, she's an awesome dog. She's a fantastic dog. She really is lovely. She's the dog that runs up to everybody going, hello human, hello. And everyone's like, oh, aren't you gorgeous? Yes, I am. Apart from, you know, the odd person just kind of goes, dog. I'm like, well, why are you working through a park? Then, you know, you're going to see dogs. There's, you know, several hundred of us out here at the time being. But anyway, that's another one of my gripes, which I won't start with now, because we're on a different subject altogether. And running, we say, was a massive help to me. She's happy now we're out running again. She likes going out for a run. Because I get, and I think, did I tell you? I think I've said this in our podcast. So I'm probably just repeating myself. But yeah, it was quite funny because... Or sometimes I kind of think things through in my head. Does anyone else do this, right? I think things through in my head, and then I think that I've said them, but it turns out I actually haven't. Okay, that is a thing that I do quite a bit. So if I have said this, I'm sorry, I'm saying it twice. If I haven't said this, well, then I've said it in my head and thought I'll say that. That sounds like a good thing to say. And I've imagined myself saying it. So so that was just possibly a bit of an anxiety thing, isn't it? There, yeah. So so I was kind of shuffling along. And she makes me laugh because she's obviously really fast and really strong. And I know if I'm running a decent speed, because at the moment I've got to just shuffle, to be honest with you. When she starts going from a walk to a trot, it was really funny. She's like, strolling along as I'm jogging along, and she's like, going, seriously, you call this a run? Can you not go any faster? I'm not even having to go into trot yet. I've got like canter and gallop still there. So I was doing well on one part of the run when she actually sort of like sprang into trot, a slow trot at that, but there we go. Right. So, but yeah, exercising it. So running really, really helped. It's helps focus on your breathing, because when you're running, you have to breathe. Strangely, you have to breathe, but you actually have to focus on your breathing, and that's one of the hardest things when you do start running. Is trying to focus on your breathing. So now I'm just able to run, say once a week for a mile. But I've been swimming 3 times a week, and you have to breathe when you're swimming as well, which is also really helpful. I say I've been doing 300 meters per session. I had this conversation, so I don't want to overdo it, okay? Because I've learned the hard way that overtraining can cause injuries, right? And I've had a conversation with my neighbour next door. She's been to Farm Fit. Has anyone heard of Farm Fit? We've got one. It's on the road from Mold to Denby. Okay, I don't know where that is, but she's been there, and she's got this T-shirt, Farm Fit. She's like, "Oh, you have to go. It's great. It's on a farm." Like, I guess that it's like you do weights and do you know what? I've got kettlebells, I've got the other weights, and I can't remember the name of them. But I thought I can't use them at the moment because I just don't want to risk doing anything to re-injure myself. So, and she's like, and I said, oh, I'm going swimming. She said, oh yeah, my sister goes swimming to the same place that I go swimming, and she's like, yeah, she said, but I just go 1,000 meters, straight away 1,000 meters, then get out knackered. And I'm like, right, okay. I've actually increased it since I've written this podcast. I've actually moved up to 400 meters a session, because you just have to build things up really gradually, because that's the way to stop injuries. But I've learned this the hard way. So I'm not keen on making the same mistake again. And as I say, swimming's really good because I have to focus on my breathing and I have to engage my core, pull my core muscles in. And it's really beneficial. It's low impact and it's got loads and loads of benefits. And just have to, I've got a membership for a local place that I go to. It's a local gym group, and it means I can go to any of them, so I can kind of fit it in with my routine depending on where I am at any one time. And say regular exercise releases endorphins, okay, and it really does improve your mood. I can tell it in my podcast that I'm quite happy this evening. I haven't had any chocolate for, I don't know, when did I hadn't had a chocolate for about a week now, probably, because I've really been focusing on just doing my exercises and stuff, and eating really healthily again, and consequently I haven't really felt the need to have anything. So it is a cycle. And as I say, I've really noticed the difference. Instead of feeling tired and asleep, I've had lots of energy, really wide awake and ready to face the day. And I've also previously done yoga as well, which incorporates your breathing, which is a good thing to do if you're an anxious person. Basically, you put your body in lots of strange positions and hold each position and breathe through the discomfort. And it's a really good, thing for doing anxiety. I'd highly recommend that. Cycling's great as well, because it's also really low impact. Just be wary if you have a back issue like mine. Physio said don't do cycling at the moment because you'll be bending over and it might re-trigger everything. So I was like, okay, I won't do that at the moment. Right, so how do you build social confidence? Well, I've given friends advice on this one. And the advice, on their Ben.org website is basically the same. And it's start with small things, okay? And it's build your confidence really, really gradually. Start by talking to somebody at a shop or at a till or a receptionist, okay? The reason for doing this is because these people are used to talking to people all of the time, okay? It's part of their job. And quite often they'll be bored at their job because they start there just going beep, 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 and they'll be grateful for a little conversation, to be honest with you. So just have a go at doing that. Hi, how you doing? Or something like that. I don't know. Oh, thanks very much for that. Are you having a nice day? Or, do you get off later, or what time are you on to, or the typical kind of Peter Kay type sort of things. Because I actually remember getting, I think I may have already told you this again, but I'll just repeat it anyway, because hey, I remember I got asked out when I was in the Sainsbury's supermarket once, and the guy was kind of really nervous, and he just kind of rambled it out really quickly. Will you go out with me, or don't suppose you go out with me, or something like that? And I just kind of smiled and went, sorry, I'm with someone, and kind of shuffled off. But I remember I used to smile at everybody that I passed as well, and seemed such a happy person. And I am getting back to that person that I used to be, but it's been a big curve. When you go through anything that's traumatic, you're going to be affected by it, and you're going to have to do a serious amount of work to overcome it. Okay, so and then you can kind of like maybe start by inviting friends round that you're comfortable with having them in your house, or go and see friends and relatives. I was spending quite a lot of time at my aunt's house, having some really good conversations there. That really helped me. And also talking to a receptionist colleague at work. She was fantastic. I had some great conversations with her. And then you can build on this, and you can arrange to meet people for a cup of coffee, or a cafe, or a garden centre. And you can work up going to garden centres on your own, having a cup of coffee on your own. I can do that now. That's good. I'm good with that. I've had dinner on my own. That's all fine. Just getting yourself used to being in a social space without actually having to talk to anyone and feel comfortable there. Like last night when I was at the theatre on my own, and the guy was like, he was checking to say, oh, hello. And I was like, as if to say, you're on your own. I was like, oh, yeah, hi, but I felt comfortable on my own, okay? Didn't bother me, but I was like a woman on her own, you're on your own, you're on your own, you're on your own, you're on your own. Did you see that? This woman's she's on her own, she came on her own. It's like, so what? We can do that. I drove there on my own as well. Yeah, my sat nav. Shall I tell you what happened with the sat nav? So I followed my sat nav to the theatre clear it is, and I've been there before, and following it round, and it sent me this way, sent me that way, and I saw somebody else turning around going wrong, and I thought, well, this doesn't look good. Drove in, and there's rising bollards, yeah. So yes, they were there in front of me, so I was like, oh, for God's sake. So I went right. And then went all the way around, right? And it took going, I'm going to be late. It's about 10 minutes all the way around, right? Driving around these lanes going, right, I reckon it'll be right here. I'll try right. And I did actually, if I keep turning right, I should end up back right where I was. And I was, and that was fine. And I got there, okay, loads of time. So when I came out, okay, I thought, right, okay, I'm going to learn the way to get here so I don't have to rely on sat nav. So I came out, turn right. And then literally the road that I'd driven up originally was about 200 yards down the road. So had I have gone left and then gone left, I'd have been there. Idiot. But you know what? Sometimes you do these things, don't you? And I think a part of it is you have to laugh at yourself when you do these stupid things. It happens to me all the time. Right. So for me, yeah, I used to kind of go and walk around Chester Zoo and then kind of, went for a bit and to buy a nice lolly and then chat to somebody in the queue and just build it up really, really gradually. Because people always want to talk, Sometimes you get the grumpy person, but you can tell by someone's body language if they want to talk to you. And so the next advice I've got is to visualize and practice having conversations. And say this is something that I did always used to do, especially if it was a difficult one. But for me, this podcast has really, really helped me. Because although I have kind of written this podcast out, I'm ad-libbing as we go along, which is great, and it's a skill, and not everyone can do it, so I'm quite pleased about that. And I say it's helped because I share stuff. Text messaging's been a massive help, isn't it? Isn't it great? Because you can let a partner know about things that I previously would have kept to myself. I'm always, messaging John going, it'll all come out. And then we'll have a conversation about it. But at least I can get it out in a text message. So now I've got to the stage where I'm actually able to have conversations about things, which is brilliant. I would say rather than just sending a message. And as I say, I remember if I had a job interview, I'd always go and find the venue the day before, familiarise myself with the route rather than just going on the actual day. And it's kind of a process, that's taken me a number of years. And I've had to really push myself out of my comfort zone. Including going on holidays with people that I didn't know very well. One of the massive things was meeting James Blunt and Chris Evans and speaking on the Virgin Radio Breakfast Show and to all of his listeners, and then meeting loads of celebs. And to be honest with you, one of the moments to start it all off, that took an immense amount of courage, okay, was to actually sit down with a pen and paper and write to James Blunt at the Fox and Pheasant and go, rah, I know what you've been doing. I know you follow me home. Okay, I know what all the songs are about. It was a pretty ranty letter. It was very, very angry letter. When I worked everything out, it was very, very angry. And at some point, I will put together a podcast entitled "How to Work Out If You Have a Stalker." Okay, right. And people who are kind of thinking, well, why is she doing this now? Well, sometimes you have to do things in order to stop things from happening, even though you can't prove it. Okay, so we'll just leave that there for now, and I'll move on. But I will just say this one thing as well. For people sort of say, why is she doing it now? Why now? Why now? Well, because I've got to a point where, I needed to. But also it's the fact that if you have a look at, just go back on his social media, okay, and have a look at what he looked like and the state of him, okay, in the end of 2021, okay, go and have a look at him, okay, and then go and see how he has looked and changed and progressed as a person. Go and have a look at his Twitter feeds or X feeds and go and have a look from that point on how they have improved and changed, and it's been less social, sort of sexual pervert coming across, and he's changing and evolving into a better person. That's all I'm going to say on the subject for now, okay? But there we go. So sometimes, if you work out something has happened, okay, then you need to do something about it. And if you worked out that person actually probably needs you in some way, to help them, then, you need to do that. Okay, you need to help that person no matter what they've done, even if they've maybe done things to you. Then for me, it's like, well, actually, somebody needs help, so I'm going to help them. So, and trying to think positively as well is really helpful, and say it's common to have negative thoughts about things. And I remember being really stressed and anxious. So say I've made a mistake with something. And I used to overthink the whole thing. And now I just tell myself it's just a mistake, okay? Nothing really serious has occurred. And it still happens occasionally though, but I've kind of learned that sharing thoughts and feelings with friends as well shares the burden. And I'm waiting for results of MRI head scan to see if I have a benign tumour or something called Meniere's disease. And my parents are not really very emotionally supportive. To be honest with you, I get more emotionally support from the dog, okay, Pippa, and the pony than I do I ever have done for my parents. So I've learned that actually, to get through this, I share stuff with my friends and my partner. And so one friend I've actually known since I was 4 years old, and she was great, because I've been supporting her all this year because she's been going through such a difficult time. So I've been messaging her pretty much every single week just to check in to make sure that she's okay. And she said, and usually it's always me, but this time it was her. And she's like, is everything okay? And I was like, no, blah. Told her what I've been going through. And she's like, oh, I wonder why I hadn't heard from you. And she's like, that must be really worrying, situation. And I thought, yeah, it is. Thank you for understanding. And someone else just acknowledging the situation made me feel a lot better. And I say I've allowed myself to have a little cry, okay, to admit I'm worried and I'm scared about what it is, instead of carry on really as if it's okay. But I am carrying on as if it's okay because, there's no point worrying about something until I need to worry about it. And as a podcast listener of mine also recently did this. He reached out through social media and said, I need help, okay, I need support. Because I'm going through something. And he was absolutely blown away to tears by the amount of support that he has received. And he says it's enough for him to carry him through what he is going through. Do you know what? What can I say? So, guys, there's a message for you out there. If you are going through something, people like to help. Please just talk to people, okay? Or talk to somebody that isn't going to judge you. Okay, maybe that's more important. Okay, so it's a good idea to keep some kind of journal. Say, I use this for my podcast. I don't really listen to, say, any of them back apart from the kind of monthly update ones. And it's going to be interesting for me actually to see how I evolve throughout the year. Hopefully, I get better. I think I've been less in this one anyway. But saying things out loud and sort of writing it down it takes it out of your head, so you don't have to think about it as much. It also helps you work out what you can do and what you can't do and what triggers your anxiety. And from my podcast, I can kind of see how far I've come, how much I've changed and progressed, and I'm really proud of myself for achieving that. And I've got a really exciting idea for a new one actually as well, but I'll just have to wait for that one. Yeah, and I listen more to others now. And before I'd maybe always try and make the conversation about me or my horse or my dog, and not really listening to other people. And I've definitely changed. I think I had a proper conversation with the person that experiences this, because I actually stood and listened to him and didn't go, oh yeah, I get that. That happens to me. It's me. Instead of going, oh right, okay, yeah, tell me all about it. Really. And I just, and he just opened up, and it was like, whoa, So sometimes people don't need advice as well. They just need someone to hear their story. And this happens to me. Okay, right. I'm the person who gets stopped on the street. Okay, and someone will just open up to me and tell me their life story. It happened the other week when I was waiting for my partner in a shop. There was a man on a mobility scooter, and he told me all about how he'd ended up there and how difficult life has been. And I added some praise and said he should be really proud of himself that he's still able to get out and about on his mobility scooter, because sometimes people will just give up and they won't do that. And sometimes people just needed to hear how well they're doing from somebody else. And I spent 10 minutes of the day just listening, it's not much really. And imagine if we all did that, just took some time each day just to listen to a stranger's story. What's 10 minutes out of your day? Okay. And when I first got divorced, I used to walk around with headphones on because it was a really good distraction from what was going on. And the radio presenters almost became friends because they get you through the day. And I also paint now, which is really relaxing and therapeutic. And it's a form of mindfulness. And it also helps your mind to focus on other things. And golf's like that as well. I was a bit stressed and angry when I went out and played golf. And I was like, did the golf kind of session thing. And I thought, after I hit a few balls, I thought, God, you know what? I feel so much better. My shoulders feel a lot looser now. And say horse riding as well is a hobby for me, and it focuses my mind. And also a large percentage of the population are lonely. Okay. And there are now lots of initiatives for people to meet up. So if you do have social anxiety, you're going to struggle to do that. But I would suggest trying to push yourself through that. And I'd say I joined a group near me called Meetup when I felt ready to start socializing again. And when I'd done that for a year, I then dated. And now I'm really happy in a relationship. I'm planning to, spend the next part of our life together. And it's exciting because I have a second chance. And there are lots of different groups out there. And there are people out there who are usually really, really welcoming. It did suggest volunteering. I would volunteer, but don't take on a volunteer committee road. Don't overcommit yourself, with volunteering. Yeah, is all I would say on that one. It is important, but if you've got social anxiety, sometimes it might make it worse. So I did some CBT as well, cognitive behavioural therapy. I got a book from Amazon written by someone who had been through the experience, and I used parts of the book to help in the way that I think, the way that I help with the way that I think, process these thoughts. And the thing that I have learned is to take small wins. So if you hit 10 golf balls and you're happy with 2, take the 2, remember the 2, okay? The 2 is important. Celebrate small achievements. I think this week I've put up that I had 107 listeners, downloads one week. I checked it this morning, it was 117. It might not be the same again next week. That's 100 extra people listening to my podcast than the original 7. Okay, it's taken a few years to get there, but I'm really proud of that fact. Okay, I appreciate that it might not continue and it might go down, and people might think it's rubbish and they might say, you're no good. And I'll just say, well, in that case, just don't listen. Okay? If you don't like my podcast, don't listen to it. Listen to something else. And I think that's maybe where you get to the stage where you actually, you're okay with yourself. And I no longer worry about the past or the future. And I live life for every moment. So if you are suffering from social anxiety, there are ways through this. Okay. I think I've given you enough instances to say that I had some issues with social anxiety. Okay. Not to the extent of other people out there. Okay. Not to the extent that you have fear of going out the house. But, if I can overcome everything that I've overcome, particularly with the whole James Blunt thing going on, especially because I have been going through all of this with possibly a small tumour or Meniere's disease as well at the same time. If I can get through this and come out the other side a much stronger person, then so can you. You can get through anything. Hope you've enjoyed that one. It's been social anxiety, and I've been on it for 55 minutes, and I'm quite proud of that. It's one of the longest ones for a while. Okay, so have a good week, everyone, and I'll catch you next time.